Bob Ross, his name alone conjures images of quiet forests, gentle snow-capped mountains, and the calming swish of a paintbrush across canvas. For decades, he stood as the gentle face of public television art instruction, making even the most complicated landscapes feel achievable for everyday people. His soft-spoken voice, signature permed hair, and endless optimism gave millions the confidence to try painting, perhaps for the first time in their lives. But behind the warm persona, the happy little trees, and the promise that mistakes are just happy little accidents, there were whispers. Curious questions that viewers quietly pondered but rarely voiced aloud. What was Bob Ross really like away from the camera? Was the soft-spoken artist hiding frustrations, ambitions, or truths he never revealed on air? For years, rumors swirled about his personal life, his struggles, and his true feelings about the fame that engulfed him. It wasn't until he neared the end of his life, at the age of 52, that Bob Ross finally admitted something fans had suspected all along. And what he confessed shocked many who thought they knew him best. The Bob Ross we thought we knew. Bob Ross was born on October 29, 1942, in Daytona Beach, Florida. Before he became the world's most famous television painter, he lived a very different life, a life far removed from the peaceful landscapes he later created with oil paint. Ross spent 20 years in the U.S. Air Force, reaching the rank of Master Sergeant. By his own admission, the military demanded something from him that seemed completely at odds with the gentleman the world came to know. He said that as a sergeant, he was often required to be tough, direct, and sometimes even harsh, things he later vowed to leave behind forever. It was during this military service, stationed in Alaska, that Ross first discovered his love of painting. The stunning, untouched wilderness landscapes became his first muse. After retiring from the Air Force, he swore never to raise his voice again, a promise he kept throughout his public life. The quiet, patient man in front of the camera was the real Bob Ross. But as time revealed, it was only part of the story, the truth about the joy of painting. When Bob Ross created The Joy of Painting in 1983, he never dreamed the show would turn him into a cultural icon. The program was intended as a simple public television art instruction series, helping beginners learn the wet oil painting technique, a method he mastered under the tutelage of painter Bill Alexander. The format was modest. Bob stood in front of a blank canvas, palette in hand, and gently explained how anyone could create beautiful landscapes in less than 30 minutes. There were no elaborate sets or flashy graphics, just Bob, his brushes, and his whispered encouragement. But The Joy of Painting became an unexpected hit, eventually airing for 11 years and spanning more than 400 episodes. Fans adored him. His hair, his voice, his outlook, they all became trademarks. However, the man behind the brush grew uncomfortable with the fame machine that was building around him. The secret behind the smile. For years, close friends, former colleagues, and even fans noticed that Bob Ross sometimes hinted at dissatisfaction with how his image was being used. His soft-spoken tone never cracked on air, but off-camera he privately worried about the commercialization of his name. Ross became the face of a massive brand empire, Bob Ross Inc., which sold paint supplies, brushes, easels, instructional books, and even children's art sets. But what most people didn't know was that he personally owned very little of the rights to his name or likeness. In fact, after signing contracts early in his career, most of the Bob Ross licensing empire was controlled by others, including his business partners, the Kowalskis. As the years passed, the artist began to quietly resent the fact that his face and name were making millions in revenue, while he saw only a small portion of the profits. But his public demeanor never allowed such frustrations to surface until the final years of his life. The shocking admission at 52, in the final months before his death, Bob Ross, then battling lymphoma, finally opened up in private conversations with close friends and family. According to interviews and reports from those closest to him, Ross admitted something many had long suspected but dared not say aloud: he hated the commercial empire built around him. Ross confessed that he felt trapped by the smiling, gentle character the public expected him to be. While he genuinely loved teaching and helping people find peace through painting, he was deeply unhappy about how others profited from his image, an image he no longer fully controlled. He admitted that he'd lost ownership of his own name. "All I ever wanted was to paint and make people happy," he reportedly said to a close friend. "But now I feel like my face is on everything, and I have no say in it." This shocking admission painted a very different picture of Bob Ross, not the eternally content artist, but a man privately heartbroken that the simple joy of painting had been twisted into corporate gain. The hair he secretly hated, one of the most surprising truths Bob Ross revealed before his death, concerned his famous permed hair. The round, fluffy afro that became as iconic as his landscape paintings. Fans loved the look. It appeared on every piece of merchandise, from coffee mugs to Halloween costumes. But Ross admitted he hated it. Originally, Bob permed his hair to save money on haircuts when he was a struggling painter. He kept the style because it became his trademark image. When The Joy of Painting exploded in popularity, he was stuck with the look. It was like wearing a mask, he reportedly said. People expected to see the hair. If I cut it, they'd think I wasn't Bob Ross anymore. He wanted to change it, but couldn't. It was part of the brand, part of the image others controlled. His hair was no longer his own choice. It belonged to the business empire. His private battle with illness. As his health declined from lymphoma, Ross kept his illness secret from the public. Very few knew the seriousness of his condition until shortly before his death on July 4, 1995. Even during painful treatments, Ross filmed his show with a smile, refusing to let viewers know he was dying. He didn't want pity. He didn't want sadness. He wanted people to focus on joy, even if he could no longer feel it himself. This choice to keep his suffering private was perhaps his final act of generosity to his fans, sparing them the heartbreak of knowing their gentle teacher was fading away. The battle over his legacy, Bob Ross' death, was not the end of the story. It was the beginning of a bitter legal battle over his estate and legacy. His son, Steve Ross, who had occasionally appeared on The Joy of Painting, contested control of his father's name and likeness against Bob Ross Inc. Steve claimed that his father had never wanted the company to own his identity forever, but legal documents, signed years earlier, told a different story. The courts ultimately ruled against Steve Ross, allowing Bob Ross Inc. to retain control of the brand. To this day, the business continues to profit from Bob Ross merchandise, while debates over his true wishes remain unsettled. What Bob Ross really wanted, perhaps the most heartbreaking truth Bob Ross revealed before his death, was simple: he never cared about fame, wealth, or empire building. All he ever wanted was to help people discover the joy of painting. He didn't want action figures, T-shirts, or coffee mugs. He wanted peace, quiet, and creativity, values that rarely survive in the corporate world. In the end, Bob Ross' confession at age 52, that he resented the commercial exploitation of his image, reminds us how even the kindest, gentlest souls can be consumed by the machinery of fame. Bob Ross' lasting legacy. Despite this bitter truth, Bob Ross remains a beloved figure. Millions of fans, old and new, continue to learn from his videos on YouTube, Netflix, and PBS reruns. His gentle encouragement and timeless lessons remind viewers that anyone can paint, not because of expensive supplies or art school training, but because of courage and joy. His face may appear on products he never approved of, but his spirit lives in every canvas bravely touched by someone who thought they couldn't paint, but tried anyway. In this way, Bob Ross' true legacy endures not in plastic figurines or branded toasters, but in the quiet moments of creation he inspired millions of hearts. And maybe that's what he would have wanted after all.